of everything.
It's easy for Hindus to become really into science and all that stuff.
I believe people of faith like to challenge atheists.
Why? What are Hindus? What's the relevance there?
Well, they can still believe that the gods actually existed, but it doesn't mean they don't believe in evolution and all these other things.
Yeah, I mean, do you accept evolution?
Absolutely.
You do? So, isn't it odd that God would use such a cruel method of getting to humans? I find that...
If you posit that his intention was to get to the current state of the universe using some naturalistic mechanism that we now know to be evolution, for example. Evolution is sufficient, but not necessarily as an explanation of the universe.
Right, but if we agree evolution happened...
It does. It
right.
can teach you to little children with potted plants in
Right. Okay, so if we agree that evolution happened, and we think that God is the creator of the ultimate source of our reality, then it follows then that he
you don't mind if I
he used no, it's okay. He used evolution then to get to humans. No.
Well, there's different ways to look at it. So, I mean, as a Christian, I'm by trade, I'm a theoretical computer scientist. I'm a big fan of things like physics, maths, and all that stuff. But my vision, my goggles is that of computer science. So you can look at the universe as a computer scientist. You can say, look, okay, we're 15 billion years old, right? We have so much.
Well, I think it's a known age actually.
Okay, but let's pretend we take a standard operating model. We go, back to 14 billion, and spanning this long, 10 to 15 years. As a theoretical computer science, I can look at the entire state of the universe as a collection of such atoms. If I just take a Newtonian model, I could give it some state, give it some time, and I could write a simulator for it. I could go down to the quantum level or up at the cosmological level. And all I can say is that the state of the universe...
Have you got your melanin?
Wait for it.
Come on.
So you say, so let's say I wanted to simulate the universe. I can just create some maths that goes, okay, here's some space-time variables, here's n dimensions, here's the state of matter as it expands, here's the current any model, which could be transformational over time, black body experiment. And I can say the state of consciousness or the state of being and state of humanity is a n-dimensional number. Then I can start asking questions like this. So what does consciousness mean? What am I? But we already know, for example, we only have 100 billion neurons in the head. So if I do a mathematical power space of 100 billion neurons, I can know that all thought is bounded. I know by mathematics and Gödel's incompleteness theorem, I don't have any proposition statements that are closed. I know in physics, I know Heisenberg's. I can look at the universe and I have non-determinism in space, non-determinism in time, and theoretically post-Turing, I know any computational mechanism, thoughts, words, language are bounded by hierarchical grammars or finite state machines.
So I don't see what this has got to do with what I'm saying.
So what I'm saying is that God is to be defined. Could it be defined as a rational concept that I could reduce using computing to some algorithm over the space-time continuum, or would I describe it to be a unknowable superset? So let me give you an example. As a human being, you're only going to live 80 years. Your neurons have only 100 billion of them. By creating all their possible power states, you can only interpret anything ever in this power state. Everything of your existence will be a limited set. And I can say, so what could God be? One definition of God could be either that which is not knowable ontologically, by such a thing,
I think that's a very loose... Okay, hang on.
No, just let me say that's how
but I don't think that's how Christians generally understand God. Generally, Christians understand God to be an omnipotent, omnibenevolent, omniscient being. Right? It's not just the unknowable. That's not... You could say the laws of physics are unknowable. Maybe we'll never know everything.
It's worse than that. We believe God is actually love. We make a stronger point.
Right. But my point is that the evidence that we have of the history of this planet, right, is one of incredible suffering and violence. The evolutionary process, which you accept happened, right, is a very violent process. It's basically the weak die, and they die quite often horrible deaths.
Darwinian selection.
Right? Yeah. So, and not just Darwinian selection, we also have catastrophes. We have impacts that wipe out dinosaurs, and there have been many mass extinction events. It's a history of incredible violence and suffering. So my question is that given that, it looks inconsistent with a God of perfect love. That just doesn't look consistent.
Okay, so there are two things. One is the argumentation of if we have free will, which is a misunderstood concept. Are we deterministic or not? If we agree that we have free will and God created something in which we unfolded, be it via evolutionary theory or what have you, into having this creature, you can make the claim that God is not good, or God is crazy, or God is mad, that he let us happen something violent like the Cambrian explosion, and wiped out after 750 million years most of our species, this crazy God, you're doing this stuff. Or we can say, no, we as ourselves can only know God and the universe within our rational bounded materialism, within our ontological metaphysical state,
right.
And we can still make a claim that's not meant to be discredited by rationalism. So an objective rationalist says, I only have my powers of rationality, my powers of science, even though I accept non-determinism in mathematics, non-determinism in physics, and non-determinism in consciousness, I can still say, suppose I had some way of understanding all of this, all we're making the claim is, this thing that happened was purposeful. We're not going to use
but you're
logic.
not just making the claim that it's purposeful.
No,
you're making the claim that God is good. So you could have an evil, purposeful God. So it's not just the claim. I agree that the degree of suffering and violence that characterizes the history of the Earth doesn't prove, or it doesn't show evidence against the idea of a purpose,
yes.
But it does show evidence against a good purpose. And the claim being made by Christians is not simply that there's purpose. They are making that claim, but it's not simply that claim.
Yeah.
What I'm objecting to is that the claim is that this being behind our existence is perfectly good. When there's such an enormous history of horrible suffering for over hundreds of millions of years before humans ever got here.
Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you want to appeal to human free will, that's going to be a problem because this suffering all happened before humans ever got here.
Can you say religion is the equivalent of instincts? Like animals have instincts, we don't, but we need something.
It's not as simple as that. I mean, it may well be that instincts give rise to religion. That's possible,
it's something to fill the void.
But it's not as simple as that. There are claims being made in religion that go, I think, beyond just simple instincts. I agree. We often have instincts that people tend to probably think that there's a creator. But the claims being made with Christianity are much more than just that there is a creator.
We've got to remember there's different variants of Christianity.
Correct, but there are some things.
They're
agreed, but there are some things that are reasonably common between them.
So we just addressed the morality in a second. So what do we know? We know there's only three types of morality, meta frameworks, if you like. There's absolute morality, which people like us do in faith. There's relativistic morality in the neoliberal world, or there's an evolutionary theory of morality. Morality is just some optimization function called the Gerhardt principle. Let's say we, for example, cured harm to us biologically, it would evolve Darwinianly to some other form of principle, and it's just some sort of emergent phenomenon. So there's three types of morality. This is the liberal, neoliberal world. Hey, live and live, let live. Joe and Jack and John are all equal. Nietzsche predicted as well. We are absolutists. We believe our operating rule set principles are those as given by revelation. Not trying to prove it. Or there's a Darwinian view world that says morality is just a fitness function, right? It's just some survival fitness function on a Gerhardt principle and some other organizational ways and we evolve them. But let's pretend for a second, let's just take the Darwinian evolutionary approach. Forget the relativistic or the absolute. But that's got a problem as well, isn't it? Because that must be a complex adaptive system. And we know from complex adaptive systems like the weather and everything else, they have non-linear phenomena, and we have no way, we had a hard boundary.
Well, not all emergent phenomena are non-linear.
Everything is emergent, no, but that's emergent, right? Yes,
right. Water, liquid state of water is emergent.
Shape of the cloud.
Yeah. They're not all non-linear.
No. I mean, gosh, if I shove electricity to a copper wire, V equals R is a linear phenomena. The quantum phenomena and collapsing wave functions, but the emergent phenomena is still linear. It's still linear. It's still right?
Let's just try and keep to the point.
Okay,
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry about
whether things are non-linear, whether things are linear or non-linear is not. I think we're moving off the point.
Right.
The point is the history of this planet is characterized by horrendous violence and the evolutionary process.
Physical violence,
and the evolutionary and great suffering and the evolutionary process in itself, the very engine of our creation, right, is this very brutal method.
Catastrophic.
Right. Yeah. Right. So that seems to me inconsistent with the idea of a perfect loving God. Now, whether there are, whether morality is carried by a linear function or non-linear function, I don't really see. To me, that's just missing the point.
It's just generally catastrophic. If the argument of the claim you make is that because things are unpredictable, violent, have some, and I don't want to expand on the morality box, some sort of violent suffering or some sort of bad morality occurring. This is a misunderstanding of what Christian love means. Christian love means is that we have been put here with a purpose. We are fundamentally, axiomatically purposeful, and our purpose is to use love to reconcile this pathway out. Love is the highest form of knowledge for us. And what do I mean by that? is navigating this violent disruption, navigating this
But
horrible
if that were
world.
true,
Yes.
shouldn't it be reflected in God's actions in the world and his actions in the scriptures?
No, because this misunderstanding is that God is being deterministic. That God is created or unfolded and manifested.
Well, okay, even if we accept, even if we say he elects some
God
some
and morality,
non-linear-
yes.
Let's suppose we talk
again,
about some
this shit again.
non-linear process,
Yeah.
right? Let's just consider, take the 10 plagues, for example, right? In the 10 plagues, God sends down horrendous suffering, not just to the people, but to the animals as well. He drowns, the 10 plagues. 10 plagues,
Oh, sorry.
right? Okay, so you want to be shooting, okay, with the sun behind you, yeah. Okay, so take the first plague. First plague is all the fish drown because he turns the water into blood. So those of fish suffer. Okay. 10th plague, and there's going on all the ones in between. All the firstborn Egyptians are killed, including their children and their animals. Right?
The Old Testament so far.
Yes. Right. Okay. Now, this looks like a violent God. Then we compare it to what we see in nature. We see a lot of violence in nature,
But why do
right?
you claim it's a violent God? Because that sounds like you make an a priori claim that the violent eruption, for lack of a better word, the savagery of the world.
Yeah.
The savagery
This
of
is
the
something
world.
he's commanded, and he commits. It's not just what we see in the world. We see both.
No, but this is a misunderstanding. No. I would prefer to think of it as God has unleashed the universe, and in it he has created moral creatures that go through this notion. So this notion of morality and pain of suffering is simultaneously physical, but it is also, for lack of a better word, abstracted or allegorical. So what is this pain and suffering that he has caused? Let's pretend he's unwound the universe and let it go. Let's say he's a deterministic water maker.
Yeah.
So he's a deterministic water maker, he spun this thing off, right? And let's say he doesn't have to meddle with it, he just lets it go and it produces this thing you label or characterize as not good. For Christians, what we're saying is the presence of the existence of suffering is a challenge to the moral creature to take that suffering, which we can trace back epistemologically to the original sin, which is what? The snake in your heart that says you have a moral choice.
Right, but the evidence is there was no original. So that Adam and Eve event never happened. Right? That never happened. So this appeal to this original sin is not consistent with the evidence. The whole event never happened.
But you can still take it as allegory.
Correct.
But okay, so you're saying the event, would we agree that the Adam and Eve event never happened?
Yeah.
We all agree on that. Okay? So why should we believe it at all that there was any original sin?
Because some people need a simple story in order to get on with life. Right.
Okay.
So for example, if God interfered in the Bronze Age, he would not be speaking about political crises of the modern world, he'd be talking about crops and famine. So if we believe there's an interventionist God, and we believe that he...
You believe there is an interventionist God, right?
We believe there was an interventionist God that occurred once.
No, but you agree he intervenes more than once. He didn't just do one intervention,
Well, it
right?
depends what you mean by that. Again, without being
Well, okay,
literal
is there more than
fundamentalism.
one miracle that God did?
Well, again, so the way you look at a miracle is what would a miracle be? Something that, for example, defies the replayability of the physical natural world, right? I see something like suddenly this lady turns to water, for example. And I say, oh gosh, this defines a naturalistic explanation of the world, and I classify it a miracle. But I would argue, epistemologically, what is the purpose of a miracle? If it's intervention, it is what? To signal...
You're not answering the question. Sorry, the question is, how many miracles... Do you think there's been more than one miracle that God's done in the history of the
I
universe?
believe there may have been more than one intervention.
May have been? Come on, in Christianity there's more than one.
I
know
know
there
there
is.
could be, but let me answer this.
Come on, I think you're being obscurantist here.
No, I'm just taking my time to answer. I'm saying if there was one intervention, the point is the intervention itself signals something to us. And what does it signal to someone who has faith? It signals that there is something beyond that has intervened. The only intervention we care about is the intervention of Jesus Christ.
Right, but why
So
don't you
if God
care?
was
Okay,
this- yeah?
but why don't you care about the 10 plagues? That was an intervention, right?
Because we look at the New Testament as a transformation of our understanding of God. So we believe, unlike the Jews, we believe that when Christ arrived, it was the Son of God. If God is a Martian, he intervened by superimposing this creature called Jesus Christ, and he gave that in signal theory as a signal to us. So we looked at signal theory and said, there's this God, he may or may not have signaled to us. At this point, we take this signal as being axiomatic. We then take that axiomatic signal as being, we believe that the signal is true, It's axiomatic. We can't prove it.
You start with an axiom. Of course, you can prove whatever you like if you start with the right axioms. Right? It's not very impressive, is it? I mean...
Well, we're not trying to impress.
Okay, well, no. Christians are trying to convert. You can't tell me they're not.
Not me.
Well, maybe not you, but in general, Christians do.
Muslim are looking for
I'm not a Muslim.
converts.
I'm not a Muslim either.
No, just saying.
I will give the same criticism to Muslims, and I have done.
Except the Jews, everyone wants converts, except the Jews.
Right. Okay. Well, the Jews don't. I agree.
Yeah, because the Jews
Right. But this is a criticism equally valid to the Muslims. I'm not saying.
Right, yeah,
I'm not trying to highlight the Christians here. Exactly. Right.
Here's the interesting thing. Don't you think that the monotheistic religions was something that prevented the scourge of socialists or communists wanting to destroy the fabric of society by bringing down the nobility? Because the Christian mindset is that even if you're born in poverty and you'll never rise up, be confident in the fact that when you die, all the people that lived in luxury will be punished in hell and you will be going to heaven. Now maybe that's a lie, but the point is that at least society was stable and accepted their places in the hierarchy.
Well, if you want to try and say Christianity staved off communism, I mean, communism arose in countries that were Christian.
Yeah, because
right?
they lost their Christianity and realized, the rich, noble and rich aren't going to be punished, therefore we want the equality and revolution now, you know?
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that the noble and rich, people have that jealousy of someone's got more money than me, whether they're Christian or not. I don't think that makes any difference, quite frankly. And Christianity doesn't really preach capitalism anyway. Like, Christianity doesn't preach that. Jesus said that the wealthy don't get to go to heaven.
No, but you can argue Christian has a sliver.
I mean, I don't think we would know what would happen, how the world would go.
It's far more easy for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than for
to take the kingdom
man to go to heaven.
And right, exactly. So it's not exactly preaching capitalism, is it?
It's not really a candidate for heaven according to Christians.
Right. Yeah.
I was raised Catholic.
I mean, okay, good.
Obviously,
well, we're wrong, man.
Okay.
It was.
I mean, the point I'm trying to make is that if you look at the. The thing you're saying is the Old Testament. Oh, we're Christians. We look at the New Testament. In Christianity, there is the view that the Old Testament is the same God as Jesus. They are not two different gods. They are the same God. Right?
God, yeah.
Right. So the point then is, when you look at these violent episodes like the flood, like the 10 plagues, like Joshua's. Let's take a commandment that God gives to Joshua. He tells Joshua to hough the horses of his enemies. Right? Now, I don't know if you know what houghing a horse is, but it is to cut the Achilles tendon of the horse. Okay? Now, God could have just put those horses, he could have just immobilized them without hurting them. But he commanded pain and suffering.
But you see,
so
you're using a moral framework to judge an absolute moral framework.
You can't.
No, but you yourself are using.
You can't escape a moral framework, right?
I'm not escaping one. I'm saying you are using a non-absolute moral framework to make a moral judgment against an absolutist moral system by claiming it makes no moral sense to you in either an evolutionary.
Well, look, let's put it this way. Either,
so you're making a moral claim that
but I'll show you why I think this leads to an inconsistency, right? Either, right, I have some non-religious origin for morality, right? Okay, it doesn't have to be relativistic. Not all non-moralities are relativistic.
An arbitrary moral value.
Well, it's not necessarily arbitrary either. There are game theory approaches to morality that are not arbitrary, right? Okay, so I disagree that it's arbitrary. But the point is, let's suppose it's either some.
It's a non-absolute.
Let's say some non-religious form of morality or some religious form. Okay. Now, if religion is true, then Christianity is true. Then my moral instincts come from God. Right? Agreed?
Yes.
Okay. So if my moral instincts,
your moral template comes from God, which you may or may not choose to adopt.
Okay. But if my moral instincts come from God, and then I look at the violence, like the conquest by.
The Nazis, anything.
No. I'm talking about not talking about the Nazis.
Talk about religious war.
I'm talking about the violence that's in the Bible.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's commanded by God. Right, commanded by God.
But
right, or carried out by God.
Still in the Old Testament.
But it's the same God. You can't just say, oh, well, it's in the Old Testament.
Yes.
In Christianity, Jesus and the Old Testament God are the same being.
Yes, but the key word here is Christianity.
Yes.
Which is inseparable from the arrival of Christ.
Right, but it's still
You
Christ.
cannot be a Christian and just consider the Old Testament.
Christ
The
is
word
the
is
Old
Christianity.
Testament God, according to Christianity. They are not different beings. You agreed with that.
I'm not
Yeah,
saying they're
but if
different
you
beings.
talk
I'm saying
about
it's a different
morality,
event.
sorry, if you talk about morality, where is the morality, for example, of a very widespread conviction, survival of the fittest? If it's survival of the fittest, that the weak must perish, and the strong are the dominant, successful community that will reproduce children and keep on occupying.
Sorry, let me
the
clarify.
planet.
I'm understanding what your argument is. Are you claiming that this state of affairs, where the weak die and the strong live, is bad? Is immoral?
No, I am asking
Then what are you saying?
Do you believe that the principle that is very widespread conviction, survival of the fittest, clashes with the morality of religions, of all religions?
No, that isn't my point. That isn't my point at all. That's completely orthogonal to my point.
Okay.
Right? That's not what I'm saying.
So what is your point?
My point is that when we look at the history of there's two points, right? Okay, two points really. They're related, right? What I'm saying is when we look at the history of life on Earth, it's characterized by what you describe: the weak dying, suffering, awful violence. Now, if there is a God behind that, he's the author of all that suffering, right? He's supposed to be all good, but it doesn't look that way. Secondly, when we look at the Bible, right, we see that he commands this similar suffering. We have the flood, where he wipes out almost all life on Earth. We have the 10 plagues, where there's terrible violence commanded on the Egyptian population. We see the command to massacre the Canaanites, and not just the Canaanite people, also their animals. Why did he command that violence to the
answer
animals?
in Christian theology, at least ontology, will be the presence of evil does not preclude the existence of a good God. And the argument is why?
No, I'm not claiming it's the presence of evil. I'm claiming it's the evil that he is responsible for.
And again, I press the point.
My rat ring friend.
Hail Shaka, Hail Shaka.
Shaka Zulu.
Hail Shaka Zulu. You're looking at the part. We're arguing about Christ and God. I haven't very long.
Yeah, I've got to go, so we can wrap up. Yeah.
But no, but quick, actually.
Let's wrap up.
So if I mention a state machine, I say God has made this world and he's put it into evil states. And he's done so in a deterministic fashion. And this deterministic fashion is a priori. It does not preclude our moral existence, in which case we are challenged to live a good life in a deliberately bad world. It does not imply God is bad. It implies God has given us a landscape to traverse.
Okay, if him commanding, allowing, causing bad things to happen doesn't make him bad, what would?
Oh, no, but again, and I refer to my point is, immorality...
No, so can you answer that question? If that doesn't make him bad, what would?
Well, I'm trying to answer this because the question is posed in such a way that you are making a judgment on God from a non-absolute moral framework. So your judgment of God is bad.
But even if I use an absolute moral framework, I would come to the same conclusion. So that doesn't matter.
But the answer would be in simple English: the presence of evil is a necessary test for us to navigate goodness.
Okay, let me ask you this, right?
I wish we could have a longer one of these. I'm totally sorry.
No, that's fine. I have to go as well.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense to say it's necessary because we suffer less now than people did in the past.
Yeah,
right. So if we can exist in this such state where there's less suffering, right? We don't experience a mass extinction event, right? Then why did they have to?
But again, the principle would be is that the presence of this suffering, of the trials, tribulations, defines the moral creature that allows the navigation of good. Without the presence of suffering, pain, evil,
right? But you don't.
We don't have the ability to choose.
But you don't need a mass extinction, do you?
Well, no, I don't need any event.
Right. But there was. Right? So if God is good, he could have not had such a violent mass extinction and one after the other after the other. Let's just take a simple thing he could have done, right? We're currently creating the 6th great mass extinction event. It's called the Anthropocene, right? i.e. humans are causing mass extinction event. God only had to do one intervention, make us all vegetarian, and that extinction event wouldn't be happening.
And what would the consequences
that wouldn't be
be?
happening.
And what would that
all the
consequences-
animals would not be fucking suffering the way they are now.
But what would be lost by that?
As far as I can see, nothing would be lost by that.
No, you know what would be lost to that? By the ability of a human soul to navigate a moral
No, I'm
landscape.
sorry, you could still
where they may
navigate
fail.
moral landscapes
but
without
suppose-
having to eat
so
meat.
Let me flip it. Suppose God is good all the time and everyone lives a happy, good life.
Yeah.
Where would your moral challenge come from?
Why do you need a right? Where does God moral challenge? Where's God's moral challenge? Is God moral?
Yes.
Does he have God moral challenges? Does he suffer?
So God is creating choices for us to go through. So let me
Okay,
use it,
okay.
for example,
Hang
if I'm a
on.
kid
So
and
you're
he's 4
saying-
years old, do I want to put him in cotton wool and make sure he never trips? Or do I want to learn to trip and feel pain and graze his
Yeah,
knee?
but you have a child, you let them trip and you let them graze their knee.
Right,
Yes,
yes.
true.
So are you
right?
an evil
But
parent? Are you a bad parent?
hang on. But you don't let them have their arms and legs chopped off. You don't let them drown in quicksand.
No.
There's a point where you go, that's too much suffering for the learning.
Yes.
And also, let's just imagine you've got an animal trapped in a tar pit,
Yes.
right? They're not learning anything. They're just trapped and they're going to starve to death. This idea that suffering is allowed for their learning,
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
It could be for the
bullshit.
learning.
What about-
They're
it
not
could be
going to
the
learn
learning
nothing.
What about Spartan society?
What about it?
Well, it's very, the kids had to go
Safety
through
first,
tremendous
COE.
suffering and some people died during the
Yeah.
training in order to be
Safety
warriors.
over everything.
So you could say that Christianity is a sense of
I
making
have
us-
dinner
The Spartans were fascists. Are you saying that we should live in a fascist
Well,
society?
the Spartans were socialists.
I
Rob
disagree.
never mind.
Well, I think they were
Rob
fascists.
Good intellectual conversation.
It's a
Yeah.
good one. Do you come often, Phil?
Not often. I go every few months. Every few months.
No,
Yeah.
but the fact
I have to go. I have to get going
The
now.
fact when you talk about suffering is a matter of degree. How much suffering a person can endure, if the suffering.
But God has given us this
is,
suffering to test us.
something
Yeah, but
like
hang on. Then why send a mass extinction event for the dinosaurs? How did it test them? They all died.
No, but
you go into something like that. You're going to die. You don't learn anything. You're not being tested. You're just suffering. End of
But
story.
we are here capable of observing that mass extinction.
So you're saying all those died so that we could learn? Is that what you're
that
claiming?
we could navigate through a moral
But
landscape.
if they, we didn't know about their suffering till quite recently.
We might only just now
Right.
learn about some other
Exactly.
suffering.
Well, in fact, there's a new mass extinction event that's just being claimed, right?
I'd like the Extinction Rebellion to be made.
Okay,
I
okay.
like-
But
I
the
like
point
that.
is, right? It clearly is not required for our moral development because most people didn't even know about it. So it does. So that argument
this is a
doesn't
long-
work.
We've
That
done
argument doesn't work.
statistics that people who are really religious, like Christians, have better mental health than people who are radical atheists, because atheists are often tempted by
Dinner over
nihilism and stuff like that.
everything.
I don't think that's at all correct.
Dinner over
but
everything.
I've listened to a Christian talk about this. First off,
Some sit-ups.
it's very hard to come up to
Running
confident
in the
conclusions
gym all
with
the
these
time, I
kind of
hate it,
studies
it's very
because
boring.
you're looking at a sort of
Like
nebulous
me, I
outcome
sent
measure.
the money of the
Furthermore,
gym, I
even those
jumped in
that
the
do
car.
agree with that, there are things
Not
that
one of the
they
gyms is very boring, so.
think are relevant here, such as community, such as singing in common with other people, which you can easily achieve through other non-religious means. Furthermore, even if Christianity is a secret to happiness, it doesn't make it true. Okay? So we're talking about the truth of Christianity.
But what do you mean by true, anyway?
Well, that's a completely separate question. I don't agree. It is necessary. In fact, if you look at societies which are the least religious, they have many, many positive outcome measures. You know.
But,
so,
I mean, it depends what you mean by true anyway, right? So, I mean, you mean
okay,
true?
well, I mean, come on. You know you're going down a rabbit hole there.
no.
We're having to
No,
wrap
but I
up,
mean, yeah, I know
and
we have
you're
to wrap
going
up.
down a
But I mean
ludicrously.
mathematical truth.
No, we're not talking about
No, but I
mathematical
mean true.
truth.
But what do you mean by truth?
Of course.
So I've had predicates,
Come
I have
on.
logic, I have semantics. Eventually, I must have
Come
trust.
on, you're
must have
trying to take the conversation.
No, I'm just curious. I would like to have this
into-
conversation
We know
with
you
people.
know we don't have time to go into
I
that.
know,
You know there are
I know
lots
it's
of
annoying.
different
I'd
theories
like
of
to
truth,
say-
correspondence
I know,
theories.
yeah, I know.
We're not going to have time to
I
go
know,
into that.
it's
And
unfortunate.
also, it's irrelevant to the point that's being made.
Well,
That's
I'm
more
gonna have to
important.
dash over.
Yeah, me too. All right, good. All right, thanks very much. All right, I got to run too. All right,
But,
cheers, guys. I have to go. I have to go.
Phil,
there is
live
still-
streams.
There is still the issue of survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
If you think that the drive to survive is immoral because it means that I am the priority, the hell with everybody else.
Yes, this is a
Then-
selfish relativistic morals.
Yeah, no, it's not a moral because I am number one.
Yes,
you know, it's not,
but it is
there
actually a
no
moral.
morality there.
It's a relativistic morality.
Yeah.
It's just a selfish gene, right? It's a
Well,
selfish matter.
you carry about yourself is your more self-serving morality. It's not a morality. Morality is when you do good for a community.
But
Because
that could also be self-serving.
Yes, it is
well,
altruism. I say,
it is still not as self-serving as what you do only
I
for
have to go.
yourself. You know?
I'm going to have
I'm
to
just-
leave.
not
though,
as
Jamie. I'm going to take
self-serving.
You're going to come as well. Sorry, I'm going to have to
Yeah,
leave because I'm
hello,
late.
bye.
You take any so.
So basically, now is late, but this survival of the fittest was carried out by
One is going down side, the other one is going to the government side.
Darwin.
Both of them your children.
That's Darwin who talked about.
Where did they come from? The sky.
And they
Who told you Al-Shabaab is
believe that
aliens?
if you
They are from
the
among
whole
you guys.
of the human
So you should know
existence
who's Al-Shabaab,
is
who's the
based
criminal, who's the
on
bad target,
survival
who's the
of the
outsider,
fittest.
who is
That's why
take
we
your
are
oil, take
successful
your mineral.
as human
No,
race
you talk about 24 Somali
on the
now. Why is it going
basis
away? Why is it going
of
away?
this
Hey,
drive
that's
for
wrong.
survival. Otherwise we would have gone extinct.
Why is it going away? Hey, come back.
Thousands of species that have gone extinct throughout. Now, for example, we logically and rationally
Yeah, this guy didn't go to Africa.
racism, because racism impairs our capability for survival. Do you agree, Leon?
I wasn't listening to that. I was just
No, I was saying that the drive to survive is part of the way we
I
are
cycle from
programmed.
Bethnal Green to here. You know how
You
long
know,
it
the drive to survive is what has made us successful as a species.
How fast?
Otherwise, we would have
And
gone
tandem bike, not the
extinct
fake
like
bike, man.
hundreds and thousands of
24 hours.
animal species. They went extinct because they didn't have enough drive or enough capability to survive.
Yeah. Because
So
you know,
usually the
people
most
are respected.
aggressive, the most overbearing is the one that survives. So we have survived for 2 million years. It means that our capability to survive is highly developed, far more developed than most of the 100,000 animals that have gone extinct. Still far more developed than the animal kingdom because animals keep on going extinct and they are at our service. It's not we are at their service. They use animal for everything. Food, work, working animal, even dogs are working animals. So this is basically the idea of the drive to survive. Once we have this very strong drive to survive, it means that we declare ourselves masters of nature. Not because we are conceited, but is part of the genetic package and the genes and the chromosome of human beings. And on the basis of that, we are a successful species because we are still around and we have managed not only to survive but to enslave animals and put them to our service, and virtually animals themselves are used by us as our guarantee for survival. We feed on them to be successful into survival.
Come take over everything.
from your melanin.
Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
How did he get influenced? How did people get influenced? He saw, Tommy Robinson's videos, Darren Osman, saw Tommy Robinson's videos, he got radicalized and he killed innocent non-Muslims because they add hatred to their hearts. Watch any Tommy Robinson videos, watch the comments. All of them are going to be talking, saying Muslims are invaders, Muslims are filthy, get out of our lands. We can see there's a correlation between Islamophobia